Good morning. It all started on January the 8th and wrapped up on Wednesday, June the 4th. What happened during the 2025 legislative session that will bring changes to our state? Well, Governor Ned Lamont is here in Studio A to tell us about some of the significant legislation he's either signed or may be signing soon. Welcome.
Nice to see you, Eric.
So we talked to you before the session began, or very early on in the session. Here we are at the end. Are you satisfied?
It was a good session. We got our budget done on time, 2-year budget, no tax increases, big commitment to early childhood education, biggest in the history of the state by far. Give those kids a running head start. And what that means in terms of allowing mom and dad to get back to work a little faster, it's a good day.
I want to talk through a bunch of those things that you just mentioned, but we talked about the last time you were here, the uncertainty in Washington. And that was sort of an overarching theme as you prepared for this session, the idea that it was unclear what the Trump administration, what cuts might be made, what might be coming for fuel support or food support or Medicaid. How did that end up playing a role when you got down to it?
It was just a cloud hanging over. At the end, a lot of the threatened cuts have not yet happened, but we got to be ready, mainly in Medicaid and SNAP, or where we could have a big hit. So we'll probably reserve a little bit of extra cash as part of our rainy day fund, just in case, to make sure we can protect the most vulnerable.
So it's not something that you really had to deal with yet because you just don't know still?
Don't know.
Okay.
You know, every day it changes, right? So you can't overreact to every single tweet.
Let's go through some of the important things that I know you're proud of. The big one you mentioned already was childcare. We're talking about a lot of kids, and it would be free or reduced cost slots, right? So tell us how that actually works.
So we're creating an endowment. It'll be $200 to $300 million in our first down payment, and over time we're going to have free early childhood education for every family up to $100,000, then a discount from there. Saves families an awful lot of money, gives that kid the running head start, like I said. And you know what else? The special ed teachers say it's so important. If we can get those kids early, maybe we can prevent some of the folks going into special ed later, which are really very expensive for our budgets.
In preparing for it, I thought about that idea of it's both the cost for the parent who might need childcare anyway, but also a benefit for the kid. Is that part of why you're so excited about it? It's not just one area that's seeing some relief, right?
It's an area that everybody seems to support. Parents love it. Kindergarten teachers think it makes a big difference. Business guys like it because it allows mom and dad to get back to work. I like it.
Talk about special education. That was a big issue for the cities and towns and some relief for them, right? Tell me what's changing with that and about the money in the budget for special ed.
Yeah, we'll have about probably over the last year and the next 2 years, a 50% increase in what we're doing on special ed. But Eric, I was really impressed with the legislative leadership, because usually they say, give me more money to keep funding the status quo. Give me more money to pay for what I've always been doing. I don't like that. How can we be doing special ed better? And that's what they're looking at. They have early interventions, so maybe some of these kids can get on track. They don't have to be slotted into special ed at a later time.
There was criticism of the budget from some cities and towns. Mayor Justin Elicker down in New Haven pointed out what he called your obsession with fiscal guardrails, and said that he felt that more money needed to flow to the cities and towns to support education. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I got 187 legislators and 169 mayors, all of whom say, give me more money. And in fact, you know, we've made biggest investments ever. Thankfully, we have a growing economy, so that allows us to make bigger investments. But sometimes management leadership makes a big difference, too. It's not always about the money.
And that would be the local leadership and management you're pointing to.
I think so.
Tell me about this housing bill. It's become such a lightning rod in our state, and so much talk about it in the last days of the session. Will you or won't you veto it? I know you've said you're going to read it and you're not ready to make a decision yet. But how are you evaluating that bill and what it does?
Number one, the only thing holding back economic growth in this state is housing. That's the number one cost. You talk about affordability, it's housing. Talk about I can't get the young workers here, maybe I won't locate my business here, it's due to housing. So we've had big growth. You know, we're doing about $150 million a year. Now we're doing about $400 million a year in investing in gap housing, workforce housing, affordable housing. You know, 90% of that housing is going to go into our biggest cities. That's just the way it is. Our cities were bigger 50 years ago. They're getting bigger again, and that's good. That attracts young people. And some of it's going to be in the towns and suburbs. We're trying to encourage them to take the lead.
But the criticism is that it's restrictions on those cities and towns, the suburbs, really, saying that, removing parking requirements, which is often an impediment to getting housing built because there's not room for enough parking spots, or allowing some commercial lots to be developed for multifamily housing. The local cities and towns say, wait, this is our zoning code, Governor. We want to be able to decide where that stuff goes. And we know you have a housing problem, but don't put it on us. How do you respond to them, and how will you, as you read the bill, how will you think about that?
I'll take their criticism to heart. I want the towns to take the lead. You show me where you want that housing to go. I put a provision in there because a lot of the suburbs down in Fairfield County, where I'm from, they hate something called 830G. And I've said, look, you tell me where you want the housing to go, maybe multifamily in and around the train station, and we'll give you freedom from 830G, give you at least a little break.
830G allowing developers to avoid some of the zoning restrictions if they build certain types of housing. When do you anticipate making a decision on that? You want to think it through?
I think I've got 30 days, so give me a little bit of time to read it carefully.
Another issue we talked about when you were first on the show before this session was higher education funding. Radenka Merich at UConn put out a statement and said, a lot of nice things about the budget, but also said it proposed significant challenges for UConn and for the other schools. How do you respond to that?
Here's what made this budget tough, because let's say in the case of UConn, we got an 18% increase, by far the biggest grant the state has ever made. But they had a lot of money left over from COVID, and that money has run out. You weren't supposed to put that into operating expenses. Some of our cities and some of our universities did that. I can't make up all that federal shortfall, but we're doing the best we can to help. UConn is extraordinary. They've done so much better over the last 10 years, really going up in the rankings, and they play a hell of a game of basketball.
Tell me about climate issues, because that was been a big thing of yours. We talked a lot about electric vehicles, and over the years, that's been a big issue for you. Are you satisfied with where we are? Is there more to do?
We got a good, strong bipartisan energy bill, first of all, which is very helpful. What it means in terms of helping to bring down rates a little bit. I'm not going to overstate it, but get some of those costs out of the public benefit. I cared a lot about the terrible flooding you had in the Naugatuck Valley. None of those people had flood insurance. Now it's mandated. You got to offer them flood insurance. You got to tell them what it's going to cost. You got to recommend if they're in a flood zone. This would be the right thing to do.
I was going to ask you about that electric bill. Last issue I want to talk about, that you said it was one step, but you need to see more. Do you have an idea what the more is yet?
Yes, we need more generation in this state. Demand for electricity is going up. You know why? You plug in everything, AI, data centers, and we're not going to be able to compete if I can't get more generation. A lot of that, I think, is what we're doing in terms of solar, maybe some hydro coming down from Canada. Donald Trump doesn't like wind, so that'll probably take a pause, although our wind is turning on in about a year. And nuclear. I think you're going to see Millstone plant negotiate how we can expand or at least extend that agreement.
You got the question a lot before the session about if you're going to run for another term, and you said we got to get through the session first. You've been a good politician. You've deflected all the questions on it, and I'm reasonably certain it's because you want to make the announcement here. So what's your plan going forward? Go ahead and make your announcement, Governor.
That's good. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it seriously. We've come a long way. The state was really on its backside, 7 years ago. I think we're getting our fiscal house in order. We're growing. People feel more confident. But so that all gives me some encouragement. We have a lot still to do. But I'm going to talk to Annie and talk to Susan and figure this out later on.
In the near, do you have a time frame on when you're going to make a decision?
I don't. As soon as I feel comfortable with the decision.
All right. Sounds good. Governor Ned Lamont, thank you so much for coming back. We'll have you back again soon.
Thanks, Eric.